Alrighty, non-farm payroll report is out, and it unfortunately was much better than expected. This is terrible news for Wall Street. Although you may not know it by looking at the stock market, everything is doing great. Wall Street appears to be elated. But what they really needed to happen today was for the jobs report to disappoint to the downside, not to the upside. You see, the Fed just hiked rates again to the highest levels they've been since the 90s, or perhaps it was maybe 2001. Might have been higher in 2001, thereabouts. Hard for me to remember back that far. I was not super aware of the world when I was, barely out of the toddler stage. But anyway, they need a reason for the Fed to look stupid, for the Fed to have egg on their face, and most importantly, for the Fed to cut rates, perhaps even an emergency rate cut. That's what Wall Street wants. That's what Wall Street needs. But the Fed's justification for hiking rates is a pretty sound one, even though it's not really having the desired effect. The Fed says, hey, Congress tells us we have the dual mandate. And Fed chairmen love to talk about how selfless they are and how they only care about the dual mandate. But in this case, their dual mandate to try and minimize unemployment and minimize inflation, that is leading them to continue to raise rates. The justification here, the logic, is that inflation is high, and so therefore the Fed must tighten monetary policy. They got to reel in the money supply. They got to get money out of the economy and bring down inflation. And at the same time, they have to worry about not spiking unemployment too much. The Fed has said they expect unemployment to go up a little bit, but the Fed can't have inflation or unemployment going up to like 8% or something in the name of fighting inflation. If that were the case, then the Fed might have to do a cost-benefit analysis and decide, you know what, maybe we need to let inflation run hot and go back to worrying about unemployment and cut rates. But unfortunately for the regional banks and for Wall Street in general and the stock market, unemployment is not budging. Unemployment was expected to print today at 3.6%. It's down at 3.4%. Once upon a time, not too long ago, there was the conventional wisdom in economics was that 5% in unemployment was the floor. That was as low as unemployment could go. We're way below what people used to consider to be, the lowest unemployment rate possible. There basically is no unemployment if you look at the official metrics of the U.S. government. Now, there's plenty of reason to criticize the official numbers, and after all, they keep getting revised higher and higher of the older numbers, and so we have reason to believe that this 3.4% unemployment rate is not accurate. But that's not going to change the Fed's actions today. That's not going to, Powell is not going to look at a 3.4% unemployment rate and say, gee, I was really wrong about hiking rates. No, Powell's going to say, gosh, unemployment's still up, but inflation is still up, but unemployment hasn't budged. I guess that means I can hike a lot more than I thought. Maybe we should just have a 50 basis point rate hike at the next meeting. You know what? Because unemployment is completely unfazed. There is no consequence to raising rates. There's only benefit, and the benefit would be bringing down inflation. But it's these rate hikes that are killing these regional banks, as I've outlined on this channel recently. These banks cannot afford to pay their depositors high rates of interest on their savings accounts. They are holding low-yielding assets that are well below current market rates, and therefore their customers are fleeing and putting their money in CDs and money market accounts that will pay them, upwards of 5% at this point. And so the only way to stem the outflows from these regional banks that cannot handle all their deposits fleeing and moving into money market accounts and CDs with bigger banks, would be for rates to plummet. They need to get rates back down to zero. They need to make a money market account something that has no yield, and therefore then people will not have a reason to pull their money out of the banks, and these banks will stop collapsing. And so what we got today was a worst case scenario for these regional banks. And yet all the worst banks in the country who are in the most trouble, such as Pac West, their stock went to the moon today. Pac West is up 85%. Sure, they're still below where they started yesterday. They're below where they opened yesterday. But they're still up 85% on bad news. And so I don't really get the logic. It could just be a blip, but it's hard to say that 85% is a blip. That's a big jump. I think that Pac West was halted for volatility like 8 or 9 times today. But this wasn't an isolated incident. The regional banks across the board were doing well today on what should have been very bad news for them. The regional banks have to be rooting for high unemployment. They want to see the economy crash so that the Fed can slash rates back down to zero, and they can stop their customers from fleeing. So I'll be interested to hear other people's analysis on this, people smarter than me, because I just can't make sense of it. Now, again, could be a blip. This is one day, but we have an extremely reactionary market. The algos constantly are trading on headlines. I don't know how the algos don't read this as very, very bad for the regional banks. It just doesn't make sense to me. Because this counters any dovish sentiment coming out of the Fed. So, the Fed did not commit to a pause in any way on Wednesday. They left the door open to future rate hikes. But, certainly the expectations are leaning towards a pause. But if unemployment doesn't budge, what reason does the Fed have to pause? Inflation's not down. Inflation hasn't been reined in. If the logic is they're hiking rates to fight inflation, and the only reason why they would stop stop raising rates before inflation is defeated is to save the labor market, a strong labor market, again, by their own metrics, I don't think the labor market's strong, but by their own metrics it's strong, that's bad news. So that's all I have to say on that. With that said, I will probably not see you folks back here tomorrow because I'm going to be busy on Saturday. I got a lot to do, and I think I'm going to be too tired. So, but certainly by Sunday. I'm not going to go the whole weekend without saying anything. I'm sure that there will be plenty that comes up that I will not be able to keep my mouth shut about. So with that said, I will see you folks on Sunday.